So we have organized this session. Like we thought Aditya from the Aditya experience, like he's been in the industry for 10 years now, and he has worked in multiple companies, had different vertical experience. So that's why we organized this session so that it can help you guys as well.
Right.
Yeah, I'll introduce Aditya first, and then I'll introduce myself as well. First of all, Aditya is IIT Bank Bombay 2013 batch pass out. He has previously worked in Microsoft, Amazon. He had his own startup as well for a year, and now currently he's moved to Google London, and he's currently working in Google. Yeah. So yeah, and you can unmute and start giving us maybe some introduction.
Yeah, hey guys, this is Zishan. I am from Jammu and Kashmir. Currently, I am studying in the National Institutes of Technology, Srinagar, and I am pursuing my bachelor's in computer science and engineering.
Hi, Zeshan. In which year you are?
I am in my third year.
Very good. That's very good to know.
Thank you.
Hi Ayush.
Hello Shubham and hello Aditya.
Hi.
So yeah, currently I think you are studying, right?
Yeah, I am in a third year undergraduate.
Nice. What about Ayush?
Yeah, I am also planning to get into the corporate job, and
Yeah.
we are trying to become a software engineer. So that's why I have came here to know something from to get something from Aditya Gupta. So I hope it will be a good session.
Welcome, Ayush. Uh,
Thank you, thank you.
I think Nakul is on mute.
yeah.
Same with
Hey, Ashish.
Ashish.
You want to go next?
Yeah, hello, I am Ashish. I am in my final year from IIT Ropar, Mathematics and Computing. Yes,
That's good to know, Ashish. Welcome.
thank you.
Hi Keshav.
Hi, Keshav. So yeah, as Shubham summarized, right, why we are doing this. I have a very rough agenda in my mind, and that's why I have prepared these slides. But even before we start, I do want to ask you guys, what do you want to know from me? What
Yeah, so I think so that's what like I Aditya has prepared some slides. We will go over to those slides, and if you guys have any questions right in between, just ask or raise your hands or maybe get unmute. And if you have any doubts or want to know anything for specifically, you can just ask. So don't feel
uh,
shy. We'll
Shubham,
try to make this as an interactive session. Yeah, hi Ayush. Yeah.
yeah, hi. So can I ask question right now, or should we? Can I ask question later on? There are just two questions that pop up in my mind, so I thought I should.
since you are waiting right now for a couple of minutes, I think it's better we
Yeah.
start with the question.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to ask two questions right now. So first is, what is your how is your life after joining the Google, and why you dropped the idea of doing business?
I'll answer the second question first. I don't think I've dropped the idea of doing business. Uh, I still do want to, at any point of time, do this. It's more about idea and execution being right at the same time. But I think in the long run, I would definitely would want to do business. Uh, Now coming to the first question, I think life is not very different from any other tech company when you are at Google. uh, I think the most amazing part is that there are so many internal technologies which are being used and which are very well maintained, which is not true with a lot of different other companies. At Google, I think the biggest difference from any other company is that the entire Google works as one. It's very like the entire tech stack, the entire thought process, the entire coding standards is as one Google. There is no different code base. There is no hidden code bases. There is no specific team which has its way of working. Anyone can contribute anywhere. I think this is one of the fundamental differences which I felt from my different experiences. Uh, but from a expectation perspective, the expectations do not change from any other tech job. Your work life balance remains the same. Your interactions with your peers, managers, they're all on the same line. One, I think one big benefit of Google is that because technology is very core to Google, uh, all of your discussions are very around technology, about what is happening new, how you can integrate or use those things in your either professional life or outside of your life, which is a bit different from other companies where businesses are more focused, where you use technology to solve business problems. Where I think again, it's the way each company behaves and works, but at a very core level, life remains same.
I think one of the popular questions should have been like I was expecting how the Google life is different from the movie The Internship. If you guys have seen it,
Uh,
like, is it true like you'll
I
get free beers and alcohol in the office?
Yes. I'm not sure if it is true in India, because India has different laws itself against drinking in public and without a liquor license. Here you can even buy like in London, you can buy beer at any supermarket. So I think it's very common. At every Thursday, we get free beers at office. It's all about that. Most of the time, I have meetings at that time, so probably it's been once I have gone there. But it's a very common thing. You'll get a lot of beers, lot of free food, lot of different options of snacks in our office. I don't know if that really is a game changer or not, because I think for me always the top priority is the work and the problems I'm solving. Everything else can be bought for money.
True. So I think let's start, right? And we will take questions in between as well.
Awesome. So yeah, hi guys, who joined late. I am Aditya Gupta. I have almost 10 years of experience in this industry, and I'm here to guide, help, mentor, answer a lot of your questions, and help you through this process of getting hired and landing your first or next job at any of these big companies. I had the slide, but Shubham already introduced me, so I'll majorly talk about my different experiences and why they were different. I started at Microsoft Bangalore. It was a very small office. We were around 30-40 folks there, and I think the most interesting part there was that I was also very fresh out of college. I had a very different view of the tech world, and I just understand how to write code. I did not even know how to write production quality code, right? I remember I joined in August, and my first code went into production in November. It's a very common thing at any big company. Nowadays, it has still simplified, but this is the time it takes to actually deploy your code to production. This was a small change which I did in Bing ads at that point of time. Imagine doing a change in a system like Windows. It will take probably years to get that change into everyone's devices. So yeah, for me, I think the biggest experience of Microsoft at that point of was that how vast businesses were and how different they used to behave from each other, and how how do you really maintain legacy? Uh, Honestly, I was surprised when I got to know that uh, a system like Bing at that time was running just on MySQL, a big cluster of MySQL, but it was purely an RDBMS database which was running entire Bing at one point of time, which was not true with other parallel search engines or other of the world at that point of time. So yeah, I think my first learning was that it really takes time to do migrations. And big companies are very slow to move into things. Then I moved to doing my own startup. It was based in Mumbai and then got acquired. And then I relocated to Gurgaon. So it was almost around 2 years I was in a startup ecosystem. And I think this was the pivotal point in my life where I, for the first time, understand that technology is not the core of everything, right? It's the business problems which you can solve with technology. You can write any fancy piece of code, but if it is not solving a real world problem, it has no value to it. And how beautiful you can design a system or a solution, if it is unusable by real world people, it's unusable. And the example I always quote was that my CEO came and told me on a Tuesday that they need a feature to be launched by Thursday, and I said I cannot do it. There is no way we can do it, because the image I had in my mind that it should take 5 days for me to do this, and then ultimately test and deploy that feature. And then he came back with a very simple answer that on a Friday morning, new movie releases. So if we don't release this feature on Thursday, uh, we can do it. Like it just loses every value for us. So uh, either we are able to do it on a Thursday, or let's not do it. And then I started rethinking that, okay, do I really need these all features right now, or can I deploy a very scrappy version? So I think and which unblocks my business, which is because of which we are ultimately all getting paid, right? So this is a fundamental shift in thought process, which the startup experience brought into me. And I think Amazon uh, works like a startup in a lot of things, but the core idea is that how do you really build and maintain things at scale, right? While you can you still have to be very agile, you have to still work very fast, but at the same time your problem universe is the entire world. You have to think about each and every aspect of your ecosystem, and how your solution would work in those different geographical areas. um, Amazon had, like, this entire stack which was built for US, and then they exported it for multiple marketplaces like UK, Germany, Australia. But it did not work in India, and they had to re-architect a lot of things to make it work in India and Brazil and South Africa and a lot of different places, right? So how I think the core learning there was that how do you decouple your business from your platform, right? What is core to your platform or your software, and what is core to your business, and ensure that your software is decoupled, from your business. And businesses are always ever growing and ever changing, so they should be able to change their rules, their integrations, their behaviors without requiring you to make code changes in your system. So I think that's the core of designing at scale and building at a large scale enterprise, right? And finally, Google. I think it's too new. It's very early for me to answer this, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, the core idea is that technology is the business. So everything revolves around technology. Every time you are thinking about a new feature, you're thinking about a new technology, right? How can I add a new feature which is more excellent in technology, which actually helps on ground people? But at the end, everything has to be making business sense, right? It's not just a very fancy piece of code. It's a very fancy piece of code which actually solves a real world problem. uh, for I think my favorite example is photos, right? Photos has a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence behind it. But the simple use case out of it, right? Like, how do you arrange your digital album is the business problem, which I don't think I can live without photos from Google, which has a lot of cool technology now behind it. So yeah, any questions till now? Is my screen visible to everyone?
No.
I thought I was sharing my screen, but let me. Oh, okay. Wow. Sorry guys, this is embarrassing. I should have been sharing my screen. Now I hope it's visible.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Let's move to the next slide. Small agenda, right? We'll talk about some resume tips and what and what not to do in your resume. High level overview of the entire interview process. Um the coding rounds, what is high level design, what is expected in low level designs. Uh, Behavioral. A lot of you might have known about it, but for a lot of you, it might be very new also. And I think I've added a very recent slide about salary and then the expectation from your new role. And then we'll take questions after it. Any questions on the agenda or anything you guys specifically want to add or remove from it? Cool. Let's move to resume. Um, Resume. The first point of contact from your to the company is your resume. It's primarily used by HRs and SDMs to filter out candidates. Interviewers look at it, but for a very specific reason. But the first point is always your HR and your candidate. Don't make very silly mistakes in your resume, like grammar or spelling mistakes. But at a very high level, you don't have to be also very fancy. Don't make it too lengthy or too short. Uh, there is not a mandate of making it a one pager. I know a lot of colleges in India mandate that your resume should be one pager, and then how do you fit everything there? But that's not a mandate from any company as such. It can go up till even 2 pages. I don't think that's a problem. It does that, generally what you're writing in your 2 pages will not be relevant for a lot of people. So like if you start writing about what you did in your fifth standard, I don't think that is relevant for me, right, when I'm interviewing you. So for like, um, the relevancy in your resume matters. Like as you will gain more experience, you'll realize that a lot of things what you did in your college or even in your job would not make sense, and then you'll start eliminating them from your resume. So yeah. Then I think a lot of people start doing this, that they will try to cramp up a lot of space in your resume by small making it a very small font, or adding a lot of small things in there. Adds no value. Your resume at the end should be readable, right? If it looks very clumsy or if it is unreadable, uh, it's not worth it. And in I think in our generation now, everyone reads your resume online. So it's it's a it's I think much better idea that your resume should be readable on a laptop or a desktop screen. Sometimes even people look at phones, in phones to shortlist candidates when they receive some emails. So be mindful of that. Don't just make it very small font sometimes, right? um, I, as an interviewer, have always used resume in behavioral rounds, and we'll talk about it very explicitly. But other than that, I don't think resumes for an interviewer makes a lot of sense, right? It's more of a filtering criteria. So uh, that is an important thing. But the last advice is, do not lie on your resumes. I have seen a lot of candidates who would lie on a resume. There is a very subtle difference between lying and exaggerating, right? Like you can talk about an entire project, what you did and your team did, but do not lie of what you have not done, because uh, I can assure you there will be questions, and then if you're not able to answer it, people are able to catch it very fast. So uh, it's like, to make your resume more beautiful, you don't have to lie. You just have to use proper English. You'd have to use uh, what you have done more accurately, and rather than trying to write something which you have not done. At the end of the day, you should be able to defend what you are writing on your resume also.
Yes. And people do ask questions sometimes, and they catch interview catch like, I think whoever's take the interview knows who, if the candidate is lying or not. So
uh, any questions here till now? Okay, let's move to the next slide. High level uh, overview of the process, right? a lot of companies, based on different level on which they are hiring, would have different interview processes. I know for a fact that Amazon, for any SDE 1, right, or an L4 at Amazon, there is definitely one phone screen. There are two coding rounds, and there is another, like, uh, primarily three coding rounds. Two of them are being done at a very lower level, but the third one is more important, which is done by a bar raiser, and then there is an HR round, right? But this is the overall process for SD2. You will have probably one more round added for a low level design, and for SD3s around can go up to five. Uh, in Google, in Facebook, very recently, because there was a hiring spree, I remember that the number of rounds were also five and six for an SD3 candidate. So almost always you will have two coding rounds minimum, right? Two or three coding rounds, and a phone screen with it, right? Uh, what happens in a phone screen, right? Uh, Phone screens are the hardest interviews because you get a very, and not hard interviews for the people who are take giving it, but for the people who are taking it. And then that's where phone screens are taken by almost always very seasoned interviewers, right? uh, the reason for that is, in a very small amount of time, you have to gauge the candidate, right? That is the candidate good or bad? And almost always you're taking a decision single-handedly, and then that's why it's only given to a responsibility, as a responsibility, to senior folks only. uh, in phone screen, generally the expectation is that people will ask you more than one questions. They would expect some kind of solution. uh, a lot of companies, instead of taking phone screens, also take online coding rounds. um, Again, those rounds are meant as a filtering criteria. A lot of times people are not able to solve basic problems, and that's where this idea of coding comes in. But yeah, your code quality is not checked there, right? Like how you are writing your variable names, or are you writing test cases, or are you writing, you are writing in Java, C++, does not matter, because no one is reading that actual code. Everyone is just looking at the final score. Speed is definitely a big criteria in these coding rounds, even in phone screens. But in general, I think from a candidate, they're supposed to filter out very basic things. Like if you're not even able to write very basic function, right? Or if you're not able to think that how can you um, speed up process of finding, let's say, an element in an array, right? You can convert it to a map by like creating more memory, but then your finding of an element becomes much more effective, right? So basic things are tested in online assessment or a phone screen. Any questions? Okay. So before interview, right? Like now, hopefully, a lot of you will succeed in clearing up your phone screen or your online exam. What happens before interviews? A lot of companies ask to come on site, uh, but a lot of times they also ask you to come do it on virtually, right? Uh, the biggest problem I have seen with virtual interviews is candidates are not prepared well. They would neither have a pen or a notebook with them, or water bottle, or better lighting, or even sometimes there is a lot of background noise, which makes it harder for people to hear. Shubham, you are saying something?
No, no.
No, sorry. Yeah. So I think before the interview, ensure that you are prepared with all of these things. Even if you don't need it, keep a pen and a notebook handy. Keep your phone on silent. Ensure that your connectivity is better. For a fact, your mic and video would be asked to be turned on. Test these things before, and do not waste on these small things time during your interview. Okay. uh, but yeah, at the end, what matters is that you are well prepared and well hydrated. uh, Sometimes your interviews could be back to back, So ensure that you will not get time sometimes in between. So ensure that you have a water bottle also handy with you. Cool, guys. During interview, I hope this is not a surprise, but your mic and your video should be on. Uh, Sometimes people also ask you to share your screen. A lot of people don't ask it, but the reason that a lot of people like me ask for it is so that you're not googling stuff here and there and then copy pasting code from some other website, right? So that's the reason that we ask for all these things. Okay. If your internet connection is poor for any reason, you're not getting good connectivity, which should not be the case in India, by the way, right? India has very good internet penetration and decently good network coverage now. Uh, the best you can do is you can ask that can you turn off your video in the worst case if it is not going well, but initially do turn it on. Do not assume that it can be turned off, but if the interviewer feels that okay, it just they are not able to hear you, they might ask you to turn off their videos. And a lot of times interviewers turn off their video or their mic so that they improve the network bandwidth available for your interview. Okay. uh
Mr. Aditya,
yeah.
I'm a little bit confused with the phone screen process. Can you tell me again what is this speed is the only big criteria during the phone screen? I didn't get it.
So generally in phone screen, you would be asked more than one question because the interviewer has to assess your multiple criteria, right? Not just one. And there is only a limited amount of time which the interviewer will get, right? So if you are able to like, for example, let's say if I'm taking a phone screen, I would take at least two. I would want to do two questions because it will give me a better understanding or idea of the candidate, right? But if you end up taking the entire time only for one question, I would not get enough data point to clearly answer that is this candidate good or bad for the company or for the next coming up rounds. And hence speed definitely matters. Even if you're not able to solve the question, right, you should ensure that by half time you are able to move to the next question. That's where like if you go to any other interviews, candidate, like sometimes like when I'm taking a normal coding interview, I might have two questions, but I can still get all my data points from just one single question. But in phone screen, because I have to gather a larger set of data points for the candidate, how the candidate actually is performing, I definitely need to ensure that I get two questions answered. And in that case, if I don't get enough time for that, almost always it ends up getting a negative feedback for the candidate.
Okay, all
Does
right.
yeah,
I
so
get it. I get it. Yeah. So, but of also that you also said that no one looks at the code during phone screen process.
no, not on the phone screen. If the code is an online test, right, then only no one looks at the code.
No
It's
one
not
looks at.
possible to look at the code.
Okay. So you
That's why
just
there are automated test cases.
look at the how much time a candidate is taking to solve the particular question.
Not even like if it's an online test, I don't think even the time matters, right? If you are doing it within the time limit what has been provided, and your test, if your code
It is
passes,
able to compile and run the test cases, then it is. I'll be
and
getting.
then there are hidden test cases. Almost always there are hidden test cases which you would not see, but your code will be run against those, right? Because but then if you're giving an online interview, then sorry, online test, then most of the times people are looking at, okay, is your code efficient or not, right? Which means that and sometimes let's say have you taken up have you thought about integer overflow problem or not, right? So like they would the question will look very simple, but they would multiply two such large integers that it will end up overflowing your integer and throwing some exception. Have you handled it, right? Like almost always whenever you're doing multiplication, ensure that you're using double. That, like those are basic things which we need to take care. But these are the hidden test cases which you would not see. You would see that my code has compiled successfully for 2 into 5, but it would fail when you're doing int max into int max. So ensure that you are thinking about all the edge cases and also then testing it on your own, right? Do not hurry. Like, there is no reason for you to submit your code. Let's say if you're given 1 hour, you do it in 15 minutes or 59 minutes. There is no difference. Take all the time you need.
Right, and also from my experience, so most of the time what happens is like most of the companies uses already like Hacker Earth and all these kind of platform. So most of the time interviewers and the companies don't look at the code. Hacker Earth compiles the report like this candidate has performed this way, like this is the score. All these test cases were passed, and based on the score they just judge. Most of the time that happens with the companies. So that's why Aditya was saying like no hurry in submitting the code. What you need to make sure is your code is passing in on every test case.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. In the interest of time, let's move a bit faster. Uh, this is a common tip for all the interviews. Okay. I think for me, the most important is the third point, which is communication. A lot of times, what I've seen the problem is the candidate starts thinking about the problem and does not put out loud. Like
Sorry.
what he's thinking, what his thought process is about is not something which the uh, interviewer is able to understand or able to hear, and that creates a big problem. Because if you are stuck at some point, or if you're not thinking in the right direction, the interviewer might be able to help you, or even if you are in the right direction, just by thinking out loud what you're thinking and why you're thinking that, gives that right feedback to the interviewer that are you in the right track or not. So for me, I think if a candidate is
Aditya,
very vocal.
sorry to cut you. I think you have not changed the slide.
I did.
Can you guys see the updated slide?
Yeah, we can see the
Okay.
slide is common for all interviews.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So communication, I think, is the biggest part. Uh, think out loud, whatever you are thinking, right? Even if you're stuck, even if you're thinking shit, what you might think is shit, think about it loud. Talk to the interviewer that this is what I'm thinking, this is where I think this is going wrong. It might be the brute force way of doing it, but talk. It's very important. This uh, on the other side of the table, what they will ask this candidate, and after your interview they would have to prepare the entire summary report and submit it to the HR in a very well documented, formatted way, with your code and with your entire interaction. So your interviewer prepares more than you like, spends more time on the interview than you think. So and those are the reasons that you have to talk about all these things during your interview. So yeah, um, I'll talk about the first thing in the last, but hints, right? Sometimes people get stuck at a problem, and then they don't understand, or they don't ask questions, right? Or they don't ask for help. uh, is it good or bad? If you're able to solve a problem on your own, very good. If you're not able to, if you're stuck at a particular problem, sometimes it's okay to ask for hint, right? uh, why it is okay to ask for hint? Because that gives the interviewer a mechanism to guide you in the right way. And are you able to unblock yourself with a hint? This is critical, right? See, if it takes 100 hints to reach to a bad. So do not shy away from asking for help. But once the candidate has, the interviewer has given a hint, do act upon it. Do listen to it carefully. I have explicitly told people that, okay, can you solve this problem using map? And they were trying to use it lists and were not able to solve it. So this is how sometimes rigid candidates could be in like so. Don't be that rigid. Take this feedback from the interviewer. Okay. Now, almost always in interviews, there are 5 minutes reserved to ask questions to the candidates. And I think this is where you can leave your impression, right? A lot of people ask very stupid questions in this time. Like they would ask about some open other positions. How did I do the interview? The candidate, the interviewer is not going to tell you all of these things, right? Salary, job, teams, where will I land up? Can I change? But ask about things which are something which the candidate can actually answer and help you with, right? like the question which you guys asked me, what is your day-to-day life looks like, right? Between how do you manage life between work from home or work from office? What is your like challenging problems? What kind of technologies are used in your day-to-day work life in your office? Or even questions like, like I work at Google. Google has more than 12 products which a billion people use. So, like, w- what is my favorite Google product, right? And then you can have a discussion on that. Why is that a favorite product? But if you ask like, okay, what is the salary expectation? Can I apply for this team? Will I get in this team? These questions are meant for HR, and the interviewer will never be able to answer these questions. They would simply just tell you that, okay, ask this question to HR. Okay, cool. So coding. Um, why coding is important? Coding is our bread and butter. This we are before without this we are nowhere. Data structures, algorithms, dynamic programming. You can use C++, you can use Java, you can use C sharp, you can use anything. Does not matter as soon as your code is good. I generally do not prefer if candidates use Python, but there is no negative marking because you use Python. It's just that a lot of times you cannot assess the quality of code in languages like Python or JavaScript because they don't provide those functionalities. So my personal recommendation is use an object-oriented language like C++ or Java. But if you guys have zero experience in them, then you can still go and choose your own language what you like, unless the problem statement itself is on a specific language, right? Like if someone has asked you that, okay, write a code in Java to implement parser interface, right? You have to write it in Java because the job description requires it. But those reviews, those questions are very rare. They are not asked very frequently. Coding questions are almost always more about algorithms and data structures rather than actual language being used. Pseudo codes are never acceptable in coding interviews. I've seen candidates ask this question multiple number of times. Uh, the expectation is always an executable code, whatever language you are using. Pseudocodes, honestly, I don't even remember writing any pseudocode ever in any job interview. So, pseudocode, please don't do it. Like, don't even waste your time in writing these pseudocodes. Uh, time complexity is very important. Almost in always interviews, your time complexity is important. If your code is not performant, it's of no use. That the and this discussion should not be happening at the very end of it, right? When you're given a problem, when you're thinking about a solution, you should also be able to think that, okay, what is the time complexity of this solution, and can we do better? What happens is almost always, given a coding problem, people start jump on the solution that, okay, I know this, how to do this, let me do. Probably the expectation from the question itself could be, okay, a very very simple question, right? Like I ask you that, okay, given a list of integers, find the integer with the given value, right? Almost all of you would be able to code it, but some of you will code it with a solution of order one is order of n, where you will iterate over the entire list. Probably my expectation was that I want the answer to be in order of one. So given an array, first you convert it to a map. But that question could only be answered because first you discuss that solution and talk about the time complexity. And if your inter- interviewer says that yes, this is a fine time complexity, then you go ahead and implement it. But if it is not, you go and rethink that how can I optimize it. It is almost always good to ask for more clarifying questions before you start implementing it. I can give you another example of a very beautiful question, right? Uh, uh, I don't know if you guys have done it or not, but there are, let's say, 100 bulbs, and every time you press a switch, the entire bulbs, their bit flips, right? And you can choose, like, there are two functions which you can write that I want to specify I want to get the status of a particular bulb, or I want to turn on or flip the bit or flip the state of these number of bulbs, like between a range, right? And how do you implement it? And I made this mistake where I implemented it very fast just by thinking that the get should be faster than the get state. But whenever I'm flipping the performance, uh, I can do it one by one by one by one, right? Now the problem is that the get used to happen only once, versus the flip used to happen 9 times out of 10. Now my code was of no use because 9 out of 10 times my code was non-performant. 1 out of 10 times it was very performant, right? Because I did not ask the clarifying question, how much should be the time complexity, or how much number of times these operations would be called, right? And if I would have been asking this question, I would have known that okay, rather than optimizing only one, I have to optimize for both of these operations. And the ideal solution lies in using bit flip, so that and using, I think, segment trees, so that both of these operations could be done in either log or I think some I think log. So this is very critical. Ask these clarifying questions before you jump onto the solution. If you don't do this, almost always it's a negative mark. Okay. Quality of code is very important. Do not make silly mistakes. I have seen candidate who will write a loop without looking at the edge case, and it's a serious no for me. There is no reason for me to hire this candidate if they are looking, looking at a code which is not working. Production quality code means that you're looking at edge cases. That does not mean that if you forgot a semicolon, we are going to penalize you. But you are not given a very well good IDE, right? Almost always you are given a very shit IDE where you can't even compile your code. But you should look at your edge cases. What all ways your program could be used, and have you covered all of those edge cases? That is what is critical to production quality. And on that is testing of your code. Whenever you have written your entire piece of code, ensure you talk about that. Okay, this is my entire code. These are all the tests against which I want to dry run my code. And dry run is the best time where you can explain your code with an example to your interviewer. If you are able to do this, trust me, there is no reason for anyone to not hire you, right? Because you have a working code, you are dry running it, you might be even able to find errors in that code, right? And able to fix them before submitting that code. It's a very good example, and not just for any interview, but even for real life. You you write a piece of code, you write a test case, you run against it, you would know where your code is working or not working. Is it working against edge cases or not? Do not just try test the happy case, what the candidate or what the interviewer has given you. Think about all other edge cases which you want to test, and then see how your code is working. Okay. In coding interview, the only reason that speed matters is because there is always a shortage of time, right? If you're not like, if for a very basic problem, if it takes you more than 30 minutes to complete the code, uh, the candidate would not be able to, like the interviewer will not be able to assess a lot of other things what they want to, because almost always everyone have limited availability. Sometimes coding interviews would have two questions, and if you just take a lot of time in one question, it's hard. And that is where preparation come into picture, right? The idea of doing lead code is not to mug up questions, but to speed up your coding. A lot of times, a lot of us are not handy with coding, and we forget basic syntax or libraries. But um, let's not do that, right? Let's be prepared, and that's where lead codes come very handy, where you become much faster in writing very basic lines of code. And that's the, I think, the biggest advantage of doing things like lead code, because it just improves your speed while you're writing code. Okay. Uh, Last is, I think, why, if what happens if you are not able to solve the problem. I think we discussed it. Hints are bad. Sorry, hints are good. They are not bad. Don't ask for too many hints. But in the worst case, let's say after 20 minutes you're not able to solve the problem, you can simply say that okay, I'm not able to solve it. Almost always, all seasoned interviewers would have a secondary question, right? they would be able to give you that question so that they can get more data points. The idea of an interview is not to reject, right? They want to hire you. That's why you are being shortlisted. So they would try to see how much data points they can gather from you, and see how well or bad you are doing, right? So if you're not able to solve a problem, you can simply ask that, okay, I am not able to solve it. So either they will be able to give you a hint, or if the question is very straightforward, they might ask you a different question, right? Similarly, if there is a question which you think you have already seen or you have already solved in previously, almost always notify the interviewer beforehand. Either they'll change the question, or they would make it a different variation, or they might still go ahead with the question with a different expectation, right? So it's if you try to fake it that, okay, I have seen this question, I do it in a minute, and they would be very happy. I think they would be able to. Interviewers are very seasoned; they would be able to notice, and that even when you are able to complete the question, the candidate, the interview will not get all the right signs what they want, right? How you are thinking, how you are testing. So it's better to just close it and then see what happens next with it. Okay.
Aditya, Shreyan said a question. So he's asking
Yeah.
like, is the lead code enough, or they do they need to prepare from code forces and hacker?
I think lead code is enough. I don't really don't think you need to do hundreds. Like if you have time, you should do it. But lead code is enough. Almost always in if parallel to your job, you will not get enough time to do hundreds of things. But like the more is like it's not gonna harm you. But I don't think it's a mandate that you have to do 100 things. Uh, I've I think when I did it was interview bit, but nowadays everyone does lead code, so you can take anyone. Do not skip hard questions, right? A lot. Like I used to do this a lot. Okay, this question is hard. I'm not doing it. There is no reason for you to skip it. If you skip it, you will not learn those concepts. So do those hard questions also. Even if you take hint one or hint two, then it's okay.
Priya has question. How many questions will you give confidence to crack the interview?
Sorry, I did not understand the question. How?
How many
I
questions
think
you should solve before like applying for an interview? I think that's what she meant. How much preparation is
it
basically
depends on
needed?
how much confidence you have in your coding, right? Like I have seen people who have done hundreds of questions and still they are not confident. I have seen people who have done 10 questions and they are confident. uh, I would say cover. It's not the number of questions but the concepts which you have covered, right? Dynamic programming, lists, arrays, views, stacks, maps, hash tables, and if you're comfortable with these, right, like graph, these are basic concepts. And if you're comfortable with these, very good. Almost always I have asked a graph question and I've seen people not do it because you would get higher confidence that I've done so many questions. The number of questions do not matter. It's the concepts which matters. So I think your mindset should be that once you have done enough number of topics, then you are ready. Number of questions is then just irrelevant.
And I think Siddhant asked DSA versus development.
Siddhant, can you rephrase, like, re-ask your question? But what do you mean by DSA versus development?
I think he meant is like based on the. I think we are going to Aditya is going to talk about in further slides as well. The design versus algorithm basically.
Oh, okay. See, coding itself would almost always require you to design some kind of algorithms, and but a lot of times specific data structures algorithm questions will focus on well-known algorithms, well-known data structures, which they will try to see if you are able to understand, decide, code, and then write tests against. Uh, when you go to design, those are almost always open-ended problems and can have various kinds of solutions. And it's almost always a discussion between the candidate and the interviewer how the implementation goes about. Both are equally important. Both are, I would say, very critical. Uh, while one gives a very clear understanding of what the candidate knows, the other one gives a very good picture of how the candidate thinks, and that's where, for me, both of them have equal importance. and there is no reason between to pick. Both are very equal.
I think it also depends, like Siddhant, like on which position basically you are giving the interview. Let's say you are a college hire, like college fresh out and giving for the entry level like SD1 or software engineer job. There, I think the focus more would be on the DSS side, because in college, like you don't get the idea of how to design a solution. You don't have the uh, that expertise. But I think as soon as you go on to the higher level as well, right, the design becomes important, like equally important, which Aditya was telling about.
So there are subtle differences between what we call as a lower level design and high level design. I don't expect college students to do high level design, right? But low level design is something which is still part of your curriculum, or your thought should be part
Yeah.
of your thought process also, I believe. When I say low level design, it primarily means how are you abstracting out your code, right? Like there are very famous solid principles in Java, right? Like how, like people who have very vast experience in Java have told about that. Okay, this is how classes should be designed, and this is how abstraction should be built, so that this code is manageable. At the end of the day, the entire goal of this industry is to write manageable code. Not like, why are we asked to not name variables as x, and why specifically long variables like index integer, not just I, right? The reason is so that it's not just you who have to write and maintain this code, right? You will be replaced by someone else would come. Like the code which one of, like, if any one of you join any of these big tech companies, right, the code could be even 20 years old, and now you have to understand that code. That's the reason. So how do you still manage all of this entire code infrastructure is guided by these principle, or it helps in ensuring that this principle, right? And that's where low level design is important to, not just for you to crack an interview, but to even be a good programmer, because you want to ensure that the code you're writing is manageable. I took it very lightly when someone told me that you would not remember the code which you have written 6 months back. But and then I read a meme that, 6 months, I wrote this code 6 months ago. Only God and I knew what was there. Now only God knows. It's true. You can, like, the amount of code you write, you would almost always forget what you had done 6 months ago. So if your code does not tell you easily what it does, you can't. So that's where low level design becomes very important. Um, how you're structuring your code, how you are abstracting out responsibilities into each of your objects, and how are you ultimately solving it, right? The classic example is design a minesweeper game, right? Now, what all different objects, classes you think about, and how interactions between them goes on, right? At what point, what happens, and that's where gaming questions are the most classic example of low level design questions, where the algorithm itself uh, would be that, okay, on a click of a button, if it is something like this, what happens around all, if you have clicked a mine or if you have clicked a number. But at the end of the day, the most important part is that, okay, what is around and what is happening in your code. uh, Someone had a question.
I think we can take it after. Let's move ahead. What do you say?
Okay. Yeah.
We'll take
Okay, I think
yeah.
we were very close to end of our time.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
right.
low level design, I'll definitely highly recommend everyone to read about solid principles in Java. uh, if someone would have told me earlier, I would have definitely done. Don't know if I can share it here or not
I'll
in call.
share it after that. After the call, I'll share to the participants. Yeah.
Okay. High level design, right? I'll only spend a minute over it. High level design is software interactions, and how these multiple large ecosystems will interact with each other. And the most critical idea is that, have you done trade off analysis, right? There are multiple solutions available in this world and multiple ways of solving the same problem. Some could be right, some could be bad, some could be good. But how do you do this analysis is critical, right? Like, what are the core responsibilities of your system? What are the core business problems what you want your system to solve? And from that you go back that, okay, what are my, what where I can compromise, where I can't compromise, and how can I use a particular technology to the best of its advantage. And then you go about solving that problem. And that's the core idea about high level design. Why am I not going into a lot of detail about this is because almost all of you are college freshers, so high level design for you will not make a lot of sense right now. Okay, and also in the interest of time. Behavioral. A lot of companies at college level do not take it, but more or more this has become a very core part of any hiring
यार अभी
process.
सेशन चल रहा है बाद में.
This I would say is the most
पिंग कर
critical
दो
one,
मुझे.
and requires the best understanding, right? A lot of companies do it because they want to assess that are you a role fit, are you a company fit, right? Are the expectation between you and the company are matching or not, right? And if that is not the case, then a lot of companies do not hire. Uh, I think it's mostly about your life experiences that you talk about and how what you have learned from those life experiences. Um, as I said earlier, do not lie. It's very easy to catch if you're talking about things, because almost always all interviewers will go into details about these things. So if you're not able to defend or talk about those things, they would be able to catch it in a minute. So talk about things what has happened in your life, like giving a real life example about how are you a good team player, giving an example from a project about work which you did not like but you still had to do it because it's for the team, or some tight deadlines you had to meet, or sometimes working with people even with differences could be good examples. But talk about real life examples and not don't you don't have to cook it up. This is something which would definitely require preparation. It will require you to uh, look at those questions, think about answers, discuss it with your friends, do mock preparation, so that when you are talking it to the interviewer, you are able to answer it more appropriately. Any questions till now? Okay. Um, Last is salary. I think again almost all of you are freshers, so there is not a lot of negotiating power which you have, because companies at your level would have, if and when it becomes relevant to you guys, you can have it.
So I think we can take one question. So Shreyans had a question: what type of projects interviewer expect from the candidate? So Shreyans, is this related to the college projects or the office projects, like college projects? Okay.
The expectation is not from the what kind of projects you have done. The expectations is what you have learned from those projects. Almost all projects would have some kind of learning, right? Like if you have done uh, let's say game designing, right? It's not that you have learned to uh, play that game very amazingly, but what kind of challenges you face while designing that game, right? You might have to learn a lot of UI interactions on your own, right? Or let's say app development, right? Then how do you develop an ad on Android and iOS, and what challenges you faced while learning those things? Or let's say you took a much larger project, what you think you would be able to do, but you couldn't complete it, and then what features you thought that you implement, and how did you get about in that in time. So it's not about the project as such, but the learnings from the project which is important. So even when you make a very shitty game like I did in my college, it's the learnings that how did I work with different people, right? How did I ensure that it gets completed, how did I divide that work between multiple folks, or how did we agree on working together, right? Those are important learnings.
Yeah, I think, and there was one candidate, like I'm sharing from my experience. So I think he did one internship in one of the companies, summer internship, and the internship was I think around of 3 months. When I was interviewing the candidate, he said like I didn't learn anything, which was not very good answer, right? Like even which Aditya mentioned, right? The project can be shitty, the game can be shitty, but every time there's a learning opportunity. So someone, if let's say whenever you talk about some projects, right, always talk about the experiences. What have you learned? What the challenges that you faced? It's never possible like you have done something and there was no challenge. Like at least from my experience, I have not seen it anything where there was no challenge. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I had one more slide. Expectation from the new role. Um, every company is different. It will take some time for you guys to get adjusted. It took me 6 months in my first job to deploy, and which I did not, but someone else did. But deploy my code to production. You will soon learn that writing code is easier than maintaining code, and reading someone else's code. The entire process of what is called as code reviews, and how other people should be, you should be able to not just write code but read meaningful code and find mistakes from other people's code, and owning that code, right? Whenever you, like, wherever you join, talk to a lot of people, make those relationships, not just for uh, uh, any any of that reasons, but for understanding that ecosystem, those people, that business much more better. And I think that would help you to get stabilized in that ecospace, in that company much faster. And in this work from home scenario, right now, it's much harder. So scheduled meetings, if almost always all senior folks enjoy these kinds of meetings, they would, if they're not able to make it, they will move it around. But it's not like they would not want to talk. They would want to talk. They would want to discuss what they have done, why they have done. This is a line which I love a lot more. Um, Respect what came before you. Whenever you join a company, you will see, oh, this is shit. This could have been done much better. It could have been, but you do not know why it was done in that way. And with time, you might learn why it was done in that way. But give it that time, right? You can change what, and things. As I said, right, like Bing was entirely based on MySQL. It probably would have taken them years to migrate, and it was just easier to add more vertical boxes and build, layer over top of it to just serve everything from cache, and actually never hit a database. So uh, uh, there are reasons which we might not understand on day one, why particular things are done in a way, and which can be obviously improved, but it's more about resources, times, and business criticality when it is done. And this thought process helps you settling up faster in the. Yeah.
Okay.
Last, let's take questions.
Yeah, so Priya has one, I think, last question for the day. So yeah, like if Priya, so there was two things. One is like if we are practicing the code and if all the test cases are not passing, should we invest time on that problem or see the solution and move to the next problem?
Okay, for a couple of questions, it's okay if you look at the solution, but if you're doing it for every question, then I don't think you're learning, or you would remember it. I remember even as a kid, my sister taught me an example, and she said this will definitely come in your exam. Learn it. She explained it to me. I said, okay. She explained it to me. I don't need to learn it or need to solve it on my own. The example came. I couldn't solve it. I got like that 6 mark question. I just left it as it is, and my sister shouted at me like for 10 minutes because she was very disappointed. And that's the reason you need to solve it. Even if you look at the solution, code it, run
Yes.
it. You would look at the code, you would understand. Don't copy it. Even if you are looking at the code and then typing it, you would learn while writing why you are doing particular things, right? So it's not just that the test cases should be running. Even if you're copying code, just do not control C, control V. Type manually everything so that you understand what you are doing, and that knowledge would be helpful probably in your next problem.
Yeah, and like I covered this topic in detail. We had a previous webinar on placement preparation. So there the thing is, right, if you starting a new problem, new concept, might be possible it is difficult for you to understand that concept. So take hints, see the solution, but always practices after as well. Don't just leave at reading at the solution. You'll not learn. So in between, like if you want to go back, see the solution, do it, but always code it from yourself so that you learn. And I think last question for the day. After that, we'll stop. So is it really necessary to go with the flow, or should we just stick to the basics like the new technologies that are coming each day and giving a hard time to fresh graduates?
Uh, okay. I think what is most important is basics. Uh, every new technology which comes is built upon some basics. The core fundamental of operating systems, of database designs, of distributed systems have not changed in years, right? It's just that your compute power, or if your hardware has improved, and then that has created a lot of flexibility of doing all of this. But if your basics are clear, everything else is, I think, just addition or a cherry on top of it. So from my experiences, if your basics are solid, right, if you understand how a compiler works, how your operating system works, how your operating system schedules, you'd be able to do things a lot more faster. If you do not do basics first and you start just jumping from technology to technology, you might be very good with the syntax of a technology, but you would not understand the very uh, you know uh, core details of why a particular technology works in a typical fashion, because you would not know the underlying problems or the underlying behavior of the system. So for me, basics are almost always important. uh, One last advice which I was given by my first manager was that you should know multiple languages. It should not be the case that you only know multiple languages. I myself I've coded in TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Java, C Sharp, C++, right? But Java is my favorite language. Java is something which I love in and out. I understand the memory management aspect of it, the lower level implementation, JVM, compiling, right? How optimizations could be done. So for me, like, this is how you should also look at it, right? Like, there should be definitely one language where you go very in depth, but also do not restrict yourself to that language. You should be open to understand other languages and learn them. So, like, nowadays, like, I have joined Google probably 3 4 months, and I've written languages in code in Python, TypeScript, JavaScript, Java, all languages here. So yeah, that's my advice, that you should always look at both horizontal and vertical betterment. Great weekend.
Right, thanks.
Yeah,
Guys,
thank you
just
so much,
if you like the session, please write about it on LinkedIn about
Yeah,
buddingo.
I think it was really informative session. Aditya, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye guys. Good night. And let us know
Good night.
in on our page if you want to have some more sessions in future as well, right?
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Thanks. Bye guys.